Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maya Prasad, and I am a co-chief ambassador for the UCR School of Public Policy. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the Spring 2020 installment of the SPP Student Spotlight Series. I'm grateful you could all join us here today. Through the Student Spotlight Series, we will be giving high-achieving public policy students a chance to present on the great work they're doing and the impact they're making on the campus, the region, and beyond. Today, we will be spotlighting the work of two UCR public policy students, Imad Jobah and Natalie Ikhrata, whom I will introduce individually before their respective presentations. By the way, we are always on the lookout for public policy students to feature, so if you know a UCR public policy student whom you think would make a good presenter, please email suggestions to spp@ucr.edu. Before we begin, I would like to go over the format of today's event. We will devote the first half of today's event to a presentation by Imad Jobah. He'll be presenting till about 4 o'clock, which will be followed by a short Q&A session. At 4:15, our second presenter, Natalie Ikhrata, will be up, and she will speak for the remainder of the time, followed by a Q&A. Now, on to our first presenter. Imad Jobah is a fourth-year public policy major and Arabic minor, concentrating in health and foreign policy. He serves as the founding director of the Clinical and Administrative Program for UCR Health. Imad, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maya. So if everyone just give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. We're having technical difficulties on my end. Natalie, are you able to share your screen?
Yeah, of course. All right, can everybody see that?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, perfect.
All right, so hi everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about an opportunity that I had that was started, so I like to call it creating student opportunities, and it was about developing a health internship program. So if you can go to the next slide, please.
Oh, sorry.
And so just a little introduction about me. I'm a fourth-year undergrad public policy major and also Arabic minor. My two tracks are health, population, and international and foreign policy, and I'm also hoping to get a career in health administration. And specifically within health administration, I'm hoping to, I have lots of interest in clinical operations, and you'll kind of get more familiar understanding of what that is exactly. So next slide, please. So basically, I'm going to be talking about the beginning story of what happened with creating this internship program. And so now if you can go next slide. Sorry. So within the School of Public Policy, most of us know that there's a requirement that we have to fulfill as Public Policy 198. And so it's my senior year fall, and I wanted to fulfill this requirement, and you can actually take up to 16 units. And so in the fall, I was looking for an internship, and I currently work as a student assistant within the School of Medicine. And within my networks, which I'll be talking how important networking is, I was able to ask someone named Debbie. That's what, thank you, Debbie. I asked her, do you know anyone that's looking for an intern? Like, I'm really trying to expand my knowledge within health administration. I would like to see what I can do. and she reached out to her people with sending my resume, and there was about 3 of them that reached out to me. One of them was in San Bernardino Medical Center. The other one was with a public health institution, and then the third one was a clinical enterprise, which is UCR Health. And so all 3 of them reached out to me, and I was privileged enough to pick one of them, which I wanted to do the clinical side of health administration. And so I became a UCR Health Administrative intern under the Outcomes Quality Manager. And on the first day, she asked me, what do I want to gain from this internship? And then I just told her just growth, and I just want to understand more about the side of health administration and just creating anything that I would like. And she told me her goals and all the projects that she had for me. And one of them that sparked my interest was formalizing and creating internships. She said UCR Health gets internships randomly throughout the years. They just send in their resumes. She gives them a phone call. And so it was very random. And yeah, and so once she told me about that, I obviously worked on the other projects as well, but this one was the one that I kind of had the most passion for. And so within developing the internship program, I knew that there was a lot of steps to it because I was obviously building from the ground up. And some of the requirements are listed here. I had to see what will the internship requirement be, what is it gonna be like, and so I had to formalize that part. And then I had to kind of make up the policy and procedures. What are the rules within the internship? What are the different departments and stuff like that? And also, how is the application going to go? Am I going to make an application through Google Forms? Is it going to be another platform that I'll use? And then setting up how interviews will be taking place. It's easier when you're able to kind of already have something established, but with starting from the ground up, I was only able to influence my decisions based off of other internships. And I also wanted to create something different, and creating the confirmation emails, those who get accepted, rejected, you receive interviews, a confirmation email, and also how the placements are going to be structured. So where the interns will be placed and stuff like that. You can go next slide. And so some of the valued skills that I learned, I believe all of them should come up next. So you can't see the first one, but it was being an independent intern for myself. I think these are all the skills that I heard from my different networks, but also my supervisor at the time. And we were kind of looking for, but also this is just like kind of like advice for other people, to be an independent worker when you're giving something, kind of not having to be told what to do. She didn't really like spoon feed me and say, can you do this, this, and this? She just like told me what her goals were and what the purpose was. And then I kind of like went to my desk, took it, and made it my own, obviously with approval and reviewing. Being someone that's passionate, enjoying what you do, because I feel like a lot of people, when they find internships or even jobs, they kind of get stuck with not enjoying what they're doing. And so I feel like being passionate about whatever it is that you might be doing would really benefit you. Achiever, as in like getting things actually done, because she's obviously in the beginning told me like I want to start a internship program, and I could have easily not have done that, and just not made it to where it actually is now. And then being a driven person, it really takes a lot to like find that motivation and drive, especially with COVID going on right now. It's really hard to get out of your bed and actually go to lecture. So I feel like that's one of the main skills that I experienced. Being curious within asking questions, asking, oh, what's the purpose of this? What should we do with this? Is there another alternative? I feel like being a curious and questionable person is a very good thing, because that's when you learn. And she saw that in me, and she kind of appreciated that. And then just leadership experience. I feel like being able to lead a team, whether you're working alone or with others, just being a strong leader that's respectful, is able to speak last after hearing what everyone has to say, and is always listening more than speaking. So we go next. So I'm going to talk about the timeline of CAP. So in October of 2019, I started off as the administrative intern for UCR Health, and I was working by developing CAP, but also other projects that she had within UCR Health. And then in November of 2019 was the creation and the start of the marketing for all the flyers, excuse me. And so we started marketing for CAP. We wanted everyone to see the flyers. We sent out emails, we reached out to a few people. And And then in December of 2019, we started the interview process. Was the first time, so I didn't really know what questions were asked, what the rubric would be like. And we wanted to start small with this first cohort, and so we were looking to accept 9 people. And then surprisingly, 50 people applied after just 2 weeks of marketing. And then January of 2020 was the first time that the cohort started interning at their different departments, and I'll explain more about that later. And then that's when I became the director of CAP, and I stopped interning for UCR Health as an administrative intern, as in my only focus was to direct CAP. And so I kind of took on that position because my supervisor, who I was working under, she left UCR Health and went to another, or she just didn't work anymore within UCR Health. And so I still have contacts with her, and she hopes for the best. And that was very unexpected and surprising because I was kind of doing this with her, she was a quality outcomes manager, like I said. And so it was just a little difficult that I didn't have a professional staff member supporting me, or I was working under. And so that became kind of difficult, and I had to become more independent. And then I had another supervisor that was able to help me out with the Public Policy 198 clearance as well. So next slide. And so what exactly is CAP, the thing I keep talking about? And so it stands for the Clinical and Administrative Program. I'm very happy about how that name came by. Like, it just makes me happy. Everyone hears CAP all the time. Sometimes some of you hear as no CAP, but so we have 4 departments under the CAP program, and it's also unpaid internship. And interns dedicate 6 to 10 hours per week. And it's a 6-month program for each of the cohorts, and they're able to keep going if they're accepted within their supervisors. And so they either intern from January to June, which is the first cohort, or then they go from July to December. So UCR Health departments always have interns available. One thing that I like about this internship is they're able to network with clinical staff, faculty, and leadership, which is different than other like volunteering at a hospital. And they also get that clinical care exposure and access to personal development workshops, which we hold within, we about have 2 to 3 general meetings as interns. And I'll talk more about it, but the administrative team kind of finds projects that they can focus on, have guest leaders, whether it's, we have 2 upcoming this quarter, which is the CEO of UCR Health, Dr. Donald Parson, and Catherine Hansen. She's the Chief Operations Officer, and they'll be our guest speakers. And so we get to kind of get insight about that. And they also work on projects within operations, marketing, or quality improvement as well. Next slide, please. And so the 4 departments that we currently have, we have it's split in half with they either get the clinical experience or the administrative experience. And so at the multi-specialty clinic, which is downtown Riverside in the first floor, they have primary care, family medicine, and psychiatry suite. And so that's where they kind of get more of the clinical aspect of it. And then the women's health, they kind of have their own specialties. And it's more focused, obviously, to women's health at Silver Oaks. And then the other side is the administrative team, which they kind of serve as the admissions committee that they help me with the next cohorts, any project management that we currently are upholding, and the professional workshops that we plan to have for the interns overall. And then the marketing team, they obviously help with the social media, any outreach engagement that UCR Health Enterprise has, and then health projects or events like the 5K Miles for Medicine run that is held every October. And so they also help with the UCR Health Instagram and UCR Health CAP Instagram as well. So next slide. And so some final takeaways and the kind of reasoning I wanted to kind of present my experience was to kind of share these insights that I've learned. Beginning with, networking is very important. I know we hear this from staff, faculty, professors, but it really does spark interest. I would have never had this experience or growth if I didn't know Debbie. Like if I didn't reach out to her and be like, do you know anyone who's doing this? And I didn't expect anything, but then she reached out. And so if I didn't really know her, and when I first applied to UCR Health as an administrative intern, that didn't exist. It was just Nastas, or I didn't mean to say her name, but the former manager just wanted an intern. And so I was the only intern that she had. And then we were able to formalize this program that now people can apply and benefit more pre-health students. Another one is prepare in advance when setting yourself up for either grad school or your dream job, as in look at your dream grad school and see what their essays are, what the essay prompts are, and kind of work around those as in if they have a leadership statement where they're asking what type of leadership experience do you have, or a diversity statement, which I'm speaking from my own experience. Kind of trying to prepare yourself even as a first year, second year, and get involved in things that will kind of help you answer those questions, whether it's also your dream job in an interview when you get to talk about those points. My next one is help those around you as much as you could, as in whether it's asking for people to help you or you to help others, it really goes a long way, and they'll always remember that, no matter what your position is. And then be kind to everyone, actually show up. This might sound like common sense, but the word does get around through all my organizations that I've been involved in, and even my jobs that I've been a part of. When people hear your name, they're gonna base it off of the experience they had with you. And so you obviously want someone, when they first think of your name, to think of positive things. And actually showing up, you'd be surprised of how many times I've heard from older people that it does take a lot for someone to actually show up to work and do their job. Because some people kind of, I don't know, some people don't do that. It's surprising. Be determined with your tasks, as in once you have tasks, to not just kind of like do mediocre with them, but just try to kind of be determined to complete it and see progress within all that's been given to you. And then just leave your mark in your involvements or job. This could even be a club on campus or a job. So when you're able to leave, you're able to kind of be remembered for something that you did, or kind of have your legacy continue. So next slide. So what's next for CAP, you may ask? No one did, but I will just answer that for you. Go ahead. Okay, so I might not sound excited, but I really am. So CAP is expanding. We have a neuroscience clinic that's a part of UC Health that we're expanding our interns. It's gonna be in River Brook, so we're gonna expand and have interns located there. So it's gonna be our 5th location. Also, we're gonna have our data analysis department at UC Path take interns, so that's gonna be our 6th department. I'm opening it up to having an assistant director for the leadership. And so when I leave as director, since I'm fortunately graduating, I'd rather have it be more than just one person overseeing, because it kind of can get difficult. And so there'll be another position open. And then a marketing coordinator, which will be someone that's focusing on all the marketing aspect, and they'll be the 3rd person in our leadership, and not just a marketing interns with UCR Health, because they have a lot of tasks on their own. And then a CAP budget. That might sound so boring, but I've been working on this with my current supervisor, and we finally have a budget that we can have within UCR Health. It's still in the works, but I kind of just want to announce that because it makes kind of the program more official, and brings better opportunity, whether the interns get polos, sashes, badges, it doesn't matter. But, and then we're also looking into having 20 interns for the 2nd cohort. So we're going from 9 to 20, which is crazy to me, but hopefully these next 3 leadership positions will do well, and I'll be able to help them transition as well. And then we had the application for the 2nd cohort close after 3 weeks of being open this past Sunday, and 106 people applied, which is just crazy to me, because it started off with 50 applying, which was still crazy. Now it's 106. And so it just means that the admissions committee, me and the 2 administrative interns, are going to have a busy month, but it's honestly so fun to interview people and look through applications and be able to help UCR pre-health students as well. So next. So shout out to our marketing team. They made a wonderful Instagram that it's just now been made, but they post regularly. If you guys want to follow us, I would really appreciate that, so it can expand. And I just left the website information there, and then the Gmail if anyone has any questions about the specific program, or if anyone is pre-health as well. So next. So thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate everyone being here. Now Maya's going to be asking me questions, but I'm also up to answer any of your questions as well once we get done with that. So thank you for being here and listening as well.
Thank you, Ahmad. That was really great. If you would like to pose any questions for Ahmad, please start thinking of them now. Just type your question into the chat box and he will answer them. But before we get to those questions, I would love to ask him some questions. So first, what were some strategies you used to find balance as a student, the director of CAP, and along with your other extracurricular involvements?
Sorry, Mike, can you repeat that one more time? It got cut off.
Oh yeah. What were some strategies you used to find balance as a student, the director of CAP, and along with your other extracurricular involvements?
Okay, question. Thank you. So let me change my gallery. Okay, so some strategies that I use. It kind of sounds really weird, but when making CAP and actually going to my internship, I kind of had. Um, that's what I really like about public policy. I had time to dedicate that internship and make CAP because it counted as a class. So I was getting units for that. I was actually getting 6 units, and so whenever I would go to work or my shifts, I was just very excited, and it kind of was relief, and it was like a stress relief. Like when I was not in school or classes or my organization meetings, um, working on CAP was kind of fun for me, and so I just that's what I kind of make like do something that you love that's kind of like a break from everything else because school can get stressful, um, and also yeah, just using the calendar. I don't know if anyone doesn't use a calendar, I'm sorry. So you please use a calendar and just like prioritize your time and yeah, that's what I would say. Not the best.
Yeah, that was great. The second question is, how has being the director of CAP impacted your future after graduation?
Oh, interesting. So, um, I mean, just with all the experiences that I've learned and the people that I've met, I feel like I'm able to do more after kind of building a internship program. And also what helped me, I'm planning to do my master's of health administration. And so with grad school, I used CAP in so many of my prompts and my interviews for grad school. And it didn't sound annoying to them. They actually, like I bring it up and they ask more about it. And they're like, so how did you do this? How did you do that? Like, and so it's just like, I was able to use this one experience. That's why I kind of, whatever you're involved in, kind of don't just be involved in that. Don't just be like a member in something. Kind of try to have something that you did or something someone you worked with, just so it can fully benefit you and you get to talk about your experiences more than just being anyone that was just a volunteer, that was just an ambassador of a program or just a student assistant at a department on campus. And so that's what I feel like has benefited me for the future this upcoming fall, which I hope is not online, but we can only wish for the best.
Yeah, that was great. What was your main challenge in establishing the internship program?
So my main challenge was, and it's still my main challenge, is rejection with students. I it, I obviously have to learn how this works. People want opportunity and now only being able to do about 20 and we start flying. So obviously I can't help everyone. And so having to kind of, but what makes me happy is that it is 6 months so they can apply in 6 months from everything situated. And so I could have just like kind of given up, and I was actually thinking about it just because how hard it was getting during winter break. But then she did help me. She didn't just leave. She helped me with tips. We deliberated who should be accepted. And then she also found another supervisor within UCR Health who oversees all the managers. So that is a busy woman, but she knows a lot of people, and she's very hands-on with me. I meet with her once a week at the clinic, and she's very helpful. Any other questions, Maya? Oh, you're on Maya. I couldn't hear you. Can you repeat that?
Sorry. I was saying, what was your favorite part of establishing the internship program? And what were some main steps you took to actualize it?
My favorite part, I would say, I'm trying to think. I would say because I kind of, since this is very new, I send out a Google form midway through the quarter to kind of get a review of how the interns are doing, how their experiences are, because they all get different experiences, whether you're in marketing, you're the clinic, women's health. And also this is an incentive for the interns. I didn't really talk about this and I don't promote this just because it's kind of just like something they can get, but we don't like try to base it off of this. But they also all get the opportunity to shadow any doctors that are available in any clinics. Whatever department you are, we do have pre-medical students in the marketing department, but although they don't they want to be doctors, it doesn't mean they can't really receive that shadowing experience. So that is an incentive that our interns do receive within the later months of after working for 6 months. But my favorite experience is hearing their review, seeing how much they enjoyed it, how much it benefits them. And I'm also planning to, this whole quarter, to have one-on-ones with each of the interns. And so just I'm excited to hear more insight, how we can build the program to be better, because obviously it being so new, I want to hear what they have to say from their experiences, because I'm not an intern, so I don't get the full experience. And so being able to kind of have that flexibility and creativity to start something has been my favorite experience. And with structure, like I said in my PowerPoint, like you just have to kind of find the policy part, the requirements, the GPA, all these different steps. And so formalizing everything in a drive and just having rules set and following those rules, I think is the most important, because it establishes how credible we are, and just giving ourselves a name, a title, a brand, social media platforms, and just getting the name out there. So when I leave, I don't want, this is literally my baby child. Like, I don't want CAP to die. So that's why I'm kind of setting it up for success for the future director, assistant director, and marketing coordinator. Because hopefully in my future, I don't know, I could possibly write a grant for CAP. Who knows? But yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Now I would like to open up the Q&A to audience members. So if you'd like to pose a question to Ahmad, please type it in the chat box.
How do you write the question in the chat? Is it for everyone, or because I only am able to message only a handful of people here?
Yeah, so it will go to the host, so it will go to Ahmad.
Oh, okay, perfect. You got it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to?
Yeah, so I got a question. Okay. Where do you see the CAP program being in 5 years from now? I don't know if you missed this, or, oh yeah, so, and he also asked, why did you decide to go pre-health administration? So the first question I'll answer, CAP in 5 years from now, how old will I be? 27? Well, I'm not gonna be here, but sadly, but I see the program being, UCR Health is very new. It's a clinical enterprise for SOM, and so they have clinics opening at different spots. That's what kind of clinic operations is. It's kind of start opening up different clinics within UCR Health, and so the more clinics open up, the more interns we can receive. I'm just hoping that in 5 years from now, the internship program can be, I don't know, 50. That might be a reach, but it could just help as many students as possible that want to experience more of clinical health and just exposure, shadowing opportunities and professional growth. And so I can't really say, but I hope it is as successful as it is meant to be. And then why did I decide to do health administration? So ever since, I'm not gonna try to ramble with my story, but sophomore year of high school, I was volunteering at a hospital, and kind of had an interest in health. I don't really enjoy science as much, and so I kind of knew that being a doctor wasn't my thing. And so health administration, I found that I'm able to kind of have a leadership position, help more of a general community, and have more of an impact and oversee more success within each department, or whether it's a hospital or clinic. And so that's what kind of interested me in health administration. And yeah, let me see. There's another question. What was the most rewarding experience? What was the most rewarding experience for you during your time in CAP? And if you had to pick one, most rewarding experience in CAP. So we are still very new, but I think, honestly, I would say this, like being able to talk about it, talk about my experiences, help anyone that gained one piece of insight from my presentation, I think is very great, because if it wasn't really for CAP, I wouldn't have much to have the spotlight on. But I feel like through this presentation, as it's still continuing, I'm now realizing how much of an impact this internship is. And so I think that's like this, that might be weird, but I think this is, because not while I'm doing this, but like when I'm on my desk working on CAP, like I don't really think about it as much. I'm just like doing kind of what I like to do for fun, but also like my job. Another question. How did you know that a student could create an internship program? I've never heard of an undergrad actually creating one. Did you work with Laura Sosa at all? So I didn't know a student can do this either. I forgot the first part of the question. Chat. How did you know? Oh, so yeah, I just like, I mean, it's not that common. I'm not telling everyone like, oh, go create something. No, it's more of like, know your worth and know that you are able to do this. Opportunity is there and available for us. And so whether it be something within a department or something within a program that you just expanded, like a mentorship program within an organization, I just feel like there's so much that we can do. And as students, we might think we're too busy. And I don't really like to say anyone is ever too busy, because it's just like depending on if you want to do it, if you're driven and passionate enough about stuff, you can make it work. And with Laura Sosa, she kind of, I do have to give credit to her. She was the one that kind of motivated me to find an internship within UCR Health. She was telling me, since you're pre-health administration, you should use your networks at School of Medicine, and kind of go through there. So she was an aspect of like help. She did help motivate me. That's why I kind of really appreciated her doing that. She also shares CAP within certain health policy students when we have our first cohort, because I saw that somebody applied. I put like, oh, where did you hear us from? Like Instagram, Facebook, and I put SPP as one of them. And a lot of people actually put they hear it from SPP, which is from Laura. And so I really appreciate that. And just her being able to kind of help guide me through the internship aspect. That's why I love the major so much, because I'm kind of in a way forced to find something which I think is amazing. And it resembles my master's program. We are forced after our first and second years in that summer to have an internship program. And so I hope more schools do that. I hope more majors do that. And so that's, yeah, shout out to Laura. So is there any other, I think there's one more question. Did the development and final result of CAP meet your expectations? Did you expect this is how the program will churn out? Thank you for that question. So the development, it's not what I expected, because I was very new to this. Like sometimes I'll be like, I don't know what I'm doing. Or sometimes I'll be like, I'm missing an aspect within, like within the interviews. But I feel like I was just learning through the process, and kind of making yourself not seem like you don't know what you're doing is best, because that kind of shows people that like during the interviews, when I first was interviewing people, they would ask like about the program, and I was like kind of in the background still developing the program, still finalizing the procedures. I would kind of give my answer as confident as possible, and be honest, let them know this is the first time we're doing this. Like you guys are the first cohort. Please be patient with us if you see any mistakes or stuff like that, like any bumps in the road. I feel like you can always learn as we're going. And did I expect the program to turn out how it is? No, I did not. I didn't expect to have amazing looking Instagram. I didn't expect to have 106 people apply, or expect to be talking about it, or expect to expanding programs. Now that we have 6 departments within, I'd never expected this, but I mean, it is possible if I can do it. I know everyone says that, but anyone like really could do it. But yeah, thank you for those questions. Were there any other questions?
Did you get any other questions?
I did not, but that's okay. You guys asked really great questions. But I do just want to thank everyone for spending their Wednesday afternoon listening to Natalie and I. She's gonna have an amazing presentation. And if you guys have any questions after, or just want to learn anything about any other experiences that I had, please feel free to reach out. I know I'm graduating, but I'm always available. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for Ahmad's presentation. Thank you again, Ahmad, for talking about your important work with us. At this time, I would like to introduce our next student speaker, Natalie Ikhrata. Natalie Ikhrata is a third-year public policy student. She is currently interning at the Western Riverside Council of Governments and is working on the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, California's housing crisis, and the SoCal Connect Transportation Plan. Natalie, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Imad, for your great presentation. And thank you guys so much for being here. I want to give a special shout out to the School of Public Policy for inviting me to speak today. And really what I want to highlight here is that knowledge is power. So I'm expecting each and every one of you to learn something new from what I'm going to share today. And if you don't, feel free to yell at me for that and make sure that you do leave this session understanding something new about housing and California's housing crisis. So I'm going to just start sharing my screen so you guys can see the presentation. All right, so just a thumbs up if everybody can see it. Okay, great. So just a little bit of background about myself before I begin. Like Imad, I am not a science person whatsoever. However, starting UC Riverside, I was a science major. I actually started as a biochem major. Quickly found out that it wasn't for me and switched over to public policy. And I'm very, very glad I did, because I really got a new insight into different kinds of policies and different kind of policy perspectives that you can get from very, very big issues and regional topics. So today I'm going to be covering the housing crisis, and I'm going to be doing it from a policy perspective. So I'm going to be going over a very specific piece of legislation. It's a housing element, trying to target California's housing crisis. So today's session, I'm going to get you guys familiar with our region, and I'm going to be laying out some specific details about that. Then I'm going to talk to you guys about the housing crisis by numbers. So during my internship, I worked for the Western Riverside Council of Governments, and I am still currently working there. When I started, I decided that I wanted to do some research into California's housing crisis. And I really wanted to see what our region looked like in terms of people who were spending money on their rent, people who were not able to afford homes to live in their specific region. So I'm going to be going over that data that I found. And then I'm going to be talking to you guys about the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, otherwise known as RHNA. So that's that housing element. And I'm going to tell you guys what it is, what the challenges are with that, and what happens next. So first, I'm going to talk to you guys about SCAG. So SCAG is known as the Southern California Association of Governments. This is a metropolitan planning organization, and it's the largest MPO in the country. So this was established a very long time ago in 1965. And basically what it is an association of local government agencies. They convene in a forum and they tackle regional issues. SCAG is in charge of a lot of different things, and many times the state will mandate specific legislation and SCAG implements it. So in particular, the SCAG region is comprised of 6 counties and 191 cities across 38,000 square miles. So it's a lot of space and a lot of area. So those 6 counties are Riverside County, where I currently live and go to school, and most of you do as well. Orange County, Los Angeles County, Ventura County, and Imperial County. So it's a lot of space. Oh, I'm sorry, and San Bernardino County as well. So those are those 6 counties. Lots of space, lots of area, lots of people, and many, many different demographics. So right here, there's this little map, which is what you can see the SCAG region is. So when we talk about housing, a lot of times people see housing as shelter, but for a lot of people, housing can be safety to protect you from the rain, the cold, extreme heat. It can be a form of security, so a space to feel comfortable and safe, to have a strong foundation for your children. This can also mean unity, a space for you and your family to convene together at the end of your day. If you've had a tough time, this brings you all closer together in one particular space. But to me, and from a policy perspective, housing is a human right. It's a basic human right. It's a basic human necessity, especially when it comes to affordable housing. So today when I talk about housing, I'm not necessarily just talking to you guys about the cute little houses that you see on the street with the white picket fence. I'm talking to you guys about affordable housing and what affordable housing means for many different people. So I want this to be a very interactive topic, so I want you guys to ask as many questions as possible about what I'm going to share with you. So right here, what you're looking at is a piece of a study that I did to find out in our region, in those 6 counties that I laid out for you in the SCAG region, how much money do people spend a month on housing and transportation alone? I found that in each region, not a single person spends less than half of their household income a month on rent and transportation. That's a lot of money. Half of your income just going towards 2 very specific things. So when I broadened my horizons and decided that I wanted to dive a little bit deeper, I actually ended up finding some pretty alarming things, specifically in the SCAG region. So what I found was that housing affordability for people who are making 50% of the average median household income is very, very little. So basically what this means, for example, is in Los Angeles County, if you look at the top left-hand chart, what you can see is in Los Angeles County, people who are making 50% of the average median income for that county, only about a little over 5% of people can afford to live based on what they're making. That's how much they can afford. If you look at Imperial County, it's a little bit higher, a little bit less than 15%. But notice that no county has people who can afford over 15%. So then I said, okay, maybe 50% of the average median household income, maybe that's a low income. So then I decided, let me do 80%. So it got a little bit bigger. What we see is that in Imperial County now, a little bit less than 40% of people can afford to live in their respective communities. But if you look at Los Angeles County, still very low. Orange County, extremely low. Riverside County, we're a little bit up there, but still below 20%. So then I decided, let me go a little bit further. So let's see, what about people making 100% of their average median household income? So what you can see is, again, Imperial County a little bit below 40%, but still numbers are looking very, very similar. So Los Angeles County, for example, their average median household income is about $63,000 a year. So for somebody making 100%, so for somebody making $63,000 a year, very little can afford to live in that county. Now I decided, well, what about making over? What about higher earners? So at 120% of the average median household income, again, we see that it's very, very little. So Imperial County, a little bit above 60%, but all the other counties, not really crossing over 20, Riverside County a little bit, but still what you're seeing is that people who are still making over their average median household income, very little people can afford to live in their respective communities. This poses an extremely big problem. It's the fact that wages and housing prices are not matched. So people are not making more money, but housing prices are continually going up. That's a very big problem. So this is where my policy gears started shifting, and I really wanted to understand what's being done to address the housing crisis, because as far as I can remember, when I was about 6 years old, I remember hearing that California was in a housing crisis. And I'm 21 now, and we're still in a housing crisis. So what's being done? What's the policy? What's being implemented? But before I get into that, I do want to tell you what happens when half of your income is going to housing and nothing else. well, you have a lot less money to spend on basic essentials such as groceries, healthcare, and education. So imagine somebody having to decide each month, do I eat or do I pay for my child's school? Because half of my income is gone and I'm paying for my house. So these are my options. Nobody should have to live like that. So you are really not leading a good quality of life when you do that. And so a lot of policy officials need to start really understanding that this is very serious. This isn't something where you can't buy your favorite Nike shoes. This is really, I can barely afford to eat. So this is the big regional issue that we're trying to tackle. So why are we in a housing crisis? Well, one of the biggest issues at hand are local land use decisions prevent the construction of housing, and more importantly, affordable housing. So basically, local leaders, our mayors and city council members, are in charge of our land use decisions. So they get to say, this developer wants to build 5 multifamily housing units on this plot of land, I'm gonna let him. And they go ahead and do that. A lot of times what we're seeing is that local officials don't want to do that. And I'll explain why in a minute. So I'm going to circle back and tell you guys about that policy that I was talking about earlier. So this is known as RHNA, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. So RHNA was established in 1969. It's a housing element law. And it's a statewide mandate that's implemented by SCAG, which is that metropolitan planning organization that I was telling you about. And it covers an 8-year cycle. So every 8 years, there's a new RHNA cycle where the state goes and tells SCAG, over the 6 counties, there's a specific allocation of housing that you guys need to plan and zone for. And then SCAG takes that big, large number and they distribute it as equitably as possible to the local jurisdictions. And those local jurisdictions have to create a housing element and basically display that they have the capacity to build this many houses, which is what their allocation is. So the SCAG region last cycle, which was cycle 5, got an allocation of 400,000 units. So those 400,000 units were divided and distributed between the 6 counties and 191 cities. Now we're in the 6th cycle. So for 2020, we are now debating how we're going to be distributing our allocation. In the 6th cycle, it's going to range from 2021 to 2029. The state said that we have to build or zone for 1.345 million homes. So 5th cycle, 400,000. And now 6th cycle, 1.345 million, a very, very big jump. And it was really not easy to tell local officials that they had to zone for that many houses. Why? Because they don't really want to build houses. It's just really how the dynamics work, and I'll explain that in a little bit as well. So the challenges with RHNA is that RHNA does not actually require the construction of housing. So jurisdictions do have to release an annual general plan, and that's going to forecast how they intend to zone for the specific housing that they get. So each jurisdiction must include the RHNA housing allocation in that general plan. However, again, I'll reiterate that jurisdiction does not have to actually build housing. They simply have to tell SCAG and the state, I zoned for it in this specific location, here's the piece of paper, and check the box. That's it. So the jurisdiction can zone for housing, but it does not mean that they will build it. And a lot of times they don't. So as I am going to mention now, I was intending to mention it earlier, but didn't get the chance. So basically when it comes to local land use decisions, local jurisdictions have to balance a very, very small budget. So for a bit of perspective, about 50% of a local jurisdiction's budget goes specifically just to police and fire. So they have a very small budget to work with. So they try to funnel in as much extra money as possible. And the way they do that is through sales tax revenue. So when a developer comes and says, I want to open up a big complex and I want it to have a Costco and a Sam's Club, and I want it to have a Target, and I want it to have 6 different restaurants and a bunch of different facilities and retail shopping centers, the city is going to say, yes, please give me that shopping center, put it in my city because I want that sales tax revenue. When a developer comes and says, hi, I want to build a multifamily housing unit, the local jurisdiction says, no, thank you, because that doesn't give me very much money. So you are taking away space that I could use to put a big industrial warehouse or a big Costco, and you're going to put it towards housing. I'm not going to make as much money. So a lot of times the local jurisdictions are going to favor putting in a retail or industrial warehouse. Why? Because they make more money. And when you're trying to balance a very small budget, you're going to try and get as much money squeezed in as possible. So this is a very, very big error that we're seeing in policy. Local jurisdictions are thinking, oh, I just need money. What they should be thinking is, my people need places to live and need to be able to afford to live in my area. So really what we're seeing is what needs to happen next. So as I mentioned, RHNA was established in 1969. Just recently in 2019, some teeth were added. And so the governor decided that he was going to impose a $600,000 fine a month for every jurisdiction that did not release a general plan. So if you're a jurisdiction who does not zone for housing, you are going to have to pay $600,000 a month until you decide to include the RHNA allocation in your general plan. However, again, the biggest issue is that this is still simply about requiring housing, not requiring housing construction, but instead just requiring planning. So this has absolutely nothing to do with getting any local jurisdiction to build housing. It is simply about getting the local jurisdiction to zone for housing. So this is really going to conclude our policy topics. And in the questions, I want all of you guys to ask as many questions as you have. What I will say is that RHNA is an extremely flawed piece of legislation, and Maya and I are going to have a bit of a conversation about why that is. So I didn't want to include it too much in the slides just because it's a lot of information. So we're going to condense it a little bit in a little bit of a conversation, but I really want to encourage you guys to ask as many questions as possible, get as much information as you can, because my thing is that the more you know, the more you get to tell your friends about it, and the more your friends get to be informed, so that when it comes time to vote on pieces of legislation like this, or to vote for elected officials that really aren't doing very much for their city, you guys can make informed decisions on voting. So I'm going to open the questions up for me and Maya, and then we can talk a little bit more about RHNA.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. If you would like to ask any questions for Natalie, please start thinking of them now. Just type them into the chat box again, and she will make sure to answer them. But first, I have a few questions for Natalie. So first, do you believe that RHNA is an efficient piece of legislation?
So like I just mentioned, RHNA, although very well intentioned, does absolutely nothing to bring housing into your local communities. So what we really do need to see with RHNA is not necessarily scrapping it and throwing it away, but instead revitalizing it. So we need to really have an intentional development pipeline. So something that I will address right here is that local jurisdictions, if housing ends up being developed, for example, let's say a developer comes into Riverside and they say, hey, I want to build a 15-unit multi-story complex, multifamily housing. Well, the local jurisdiction who is trying to struggle with that very small budget, as I mentioned, is going to try and get as much money from this housing complex as possible. So what they're going to do is they're going to tack on fees. So we call these development impact fees. So these are fees that a developer has to pay if they want to develop that specific plot of, develop on that specific plot of land. So they have to end up paying that fee. And then the local jurisdiction might say, also, you need to submit an environmental impact report. So when you do that, you do this through a CEQA process, and this is all about the environment. So it's about calculating what's going to happen to the environment when you are constructing on that piece of land. Well, when the developer does that, they have to spend even more money. So honestly, what ends up happening is that you're telling this developer, I need you to pay all these fees on top of your construction fees. Well, what happens? The developer says, no, thank you. I'll go to a place that's going to incentivize me to put that multi-story family complex in a different city, but where I don't have to spend as much money. So a lot of times local jurisdictions are trying to get as much money as possible, which actually ends up pushing away developers. So what we need is a development pipeline that's going to have state involvement, where the state says, okay, you know what? Local jurisdictions, we're gonna cover those small costs. We're gonna cover those development impact fees. We're gonna give you money as long as you make sure that that developer puts that parcel, puts that multifamily complex on that parcel of land that you have. So it needs to be about state and local government working together, where what we tend to see is that the state is not working with local government and local government is blaming the state for why they can't build housing. So it's a very complicated process, but I think it would work a lot more efficiently if we had that pipeline where you can join private and public sectors together.
That was great. The second question is, what do you think is the most important thing to focus on when it comes to solving the housing crisis?
Most important thing to focus on when solving the housing crisis. I really want to say it's just about unity. It's about local jurisdictions need to understand that people really are struggling to make ends meet as it is. And I don't think they're being very sympathetic to that. Especially what I see is, so my main job at WRCOG is to attend a lot of meetings. I go to a lot of city council meetings, and I have to listen to a lot of city council members say that this is everybody else's fault but mine. I think it's really time for people to start taking accountability, to say, you know what, let's try something different. Let's try and bring an incentive. Let's try and have a conversation with the state. Let's see if we can work out an agreement with the state. There was another idea. I was actually talking to a colleague of mine from the Milken Institute, and he was telling me that imagine if the state talked to CalPERS, I believe it is CalPERS or CalSTRS, which is the teachers association, and it's a very large fund. And if you guys know anything about the fund itself, it's a lot of money being poured in each month. They have a very large budget. And right now we also know that teachers and housing, that's a crisis within itself. Teachers can't afford to live where they work. So that's a big issue. So imagine if you told this fund, if the state reached out and said, hey, CalSTRS, if you allocated a certain amount of money, we'll build 60,000 units of housing for your teachers. Imagine how they would be pouring money into this. They would be throwing money out left and right. So really, it's about conversation. A lot of times what I see, especially when it comes to the debate, is that it's less of a debate and it's more of a screaming match, where you have a lot of people who are yelling on one side and yelling on the, oh, it's your fault, oh no, it's your fault. Let's just all take it down a notch. Let's all have a civil debate, a policy debate. Let's talk about different ideas instead of just casting blame towards one another. Let's sit down and say, you know what, something's not working. We've had a bunch of legislation that we've been trying. It's not working. So let's get together and let's try and bridge this gap that we're having. Because as far as I can remember, like I said, since I was 6 years old, we've been in a housing crisis. I'm 21. It's a very long time for me to be a little kid knowing that there are people that are struggling to afford housing. And we all know that the number one reason why people become homeless is because they can't afford a place to live. So, we need to, this is a very dynamic issue. And I think that the longer we try and cast blame on everybody else without taking accountability for our actions, the longer we're just going to stay in this constant cycle of not getting anything done.
Thank you. Going off that, is there anything the public can do to help with the housing crisis?
Vote. Get informed and vote your little heart out. And I'm not just talking about voting for the president. I'm talking about voting in your local jurisdiction. If you live in Corona, in Rancho Cucamonga, in Riverside, I don't care where you are, vote. Get to know what your local official is actually doing to address certain things that are going on, because what we're seeing is that a lot of local officials are acting on their constituents, which are really the 4 old people who are retired now, who have time to go to the city council meeting and complain and say that they're not happy. And so what those local officials do is they say, oh, well, these are the people that took time to, you know, come and tell me how they feel. So this must be the overall feeling. That's not true at all. Because what we know is that the people who are working the 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. shifts or the 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. shifts are not people who have time to go to the city council meeting and cast an issue and say, you know what, I'm having a problem. So as young people, we really are empowered. We really have the power to invoke real change. So I would say, please don't just say, oh, I voted for the president. Say, I voted for my mayor. I voted for my congresswoman or my congressman. Be mindful and be aware of what's going on, because a lot of times people can say one thing, oh, I'm for everybody. I speak for my people. We don't know that. Because honestly, if you look at their track record, I'm not really seeing that, especially when it comes to housing. So bring that up. Write a letter to your congressman. Write a letter to your mayor. Do your part as a young individual to say, you know what, I'm seeing a problem with this. It might not be affecting me personally, but I still have an issue. So you know what, I'm gonna address that issue. So I would say, please just do your part, be engaged.
Perfect, thank you. Now I'd like to open up to audience members' questions. If you have any questions for Natalie, please type it in the chat box.
Okay, so yeah, I have a couple. So in areas such as mine, zoning has prohibited any more housing throughout my local mountains. Is this common and part of the problem? So I'll just like address that first question. So zoning being prohibited in mountain areas, that's something that I'm not extremely familiar with. I might have to defer that to going to your local agency of that specific city. But let me see. So zoning being prohibited, that, okay, so I'm gonna say, just based on what I know, it might be specifically because there's an environmental concern. So there could be a species that they're trying to conserve, or a piece of land that they're trying to conserve that they don't want to put housing on. But what it could also mean is that your city came up with something and said, you know what, we just don't want to build any housing in this area because people are complaining, and so we're just not going to zone here anymore. So I would say look on your local website, or maybe contact somebody from your city and see why in particular that zoning is not happening. And then second part of the question, how much of the problem is not in my backyard when it comes to apartment complexes, multifamily housing, etc.? So NIMBY is one of the biggest problems. So when I say local elected officials denying housing elements and housing zoning, it really is NIMBYs. So NIMBY is not in my backyard mentality, which is a very common term. So these are individuals, like I said, who will show up to the city council meetings and say, oh, well, there's a proposed 5-story unit and it's blocking my beautiful view of the clouds, and so you can't build it, and I'm very upset. And the more times than not, local officials will say, oh, okay, no problem, we won't do it. So really it is an issue, but I'm also gonna say, I will also always advocate for the other side. People do need to start standing up. And I understand, I'm very sympathetic. Like I said, there are a lot of people that do not have time to go to the city council meeting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was only able to go to them because it's literally my job to do that. But I do think that if you know somebody who is having an issue like that, where they were really looking forward to a multifamily complex going up in a specific, it was finally a place for them to afford to live, then maybe you go on their behalf and advocate for them. Maybe you find a group of individuals, or you try and get a cohort of people to go to the city council meeting and say, you know what, you 4 old people who, you know, really are trying to not get this apartment complex started, we want it. So we're gonna come together and we're gonna kind of mobilize and try and get that passed. Because the thing is that city council members are not gonna listen to you if you're not talking. So that's a big thing. You know, people don't really pay attention when you don't have anything to say. So make sure you have something to stand up for. And like I said, if your friend or relative or neighbor can't go for them. Get a couple friends. Make it a fun night. Just say, hey, let's go complain to city council about this one thing that they're doing, and then let's after go get a burger or something. You know, make it And then next question, how should we work with folks that believe in NIMBY? Is it a lost cause to change their mind? Shall we just proceed without having a certain community, support? So I would say a lot of times the NIMBY mentality is based on misinformation, or it's based on selfish attitudes. So it could be that this one individual doesn't want their view to be blocked by this big multifamily complex. That's understandable to an extent, but remember that the negative externalities of not building that multifamily complex means that a family can't afford to live in that area, even if they work there. So really what I would say is that it's not a lost cause to change their mind. I would just say that it comes with bringing more information to the table, which is why I'm so grateful to have this student spotlight chat, because a lot of you guys now have the opportunity to go and talk to your family members, to go and talk to your friends, to your distant relatives, and make sure that they're aware, so that the next time somebody says, hey, you know what, we want to build a multi-story complex in the city of Corona, they're not so hasty to say, oh God, no, I couldn't deal with that, that's horrible. So I really do think it starts with just having a very civil conversation, not to cast blame, not to say that they're wrong for how they feel, but really to just be polite and say, I understand where you're coming from, but you also need to understand that if we don't build housing, the cost of that is going to be very, very severe. And I think we're seeing that more and more as we see that in, for example, so state of California, I don't know if you guys know this, but the state of California is the 5th largest economy in the world. It's a state. It's the 5th largest economy in the world. All of the other ones ranked are countries: Japan, Germany, United Kingdom, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all countries, but us as a state, we're the 5th largest economy in the world. That means we've got a lot of money, and yet we have the highest homeless population in the country. Highest homeless, I can't even fathom that. You can walk in LA and see at least 1 million people who don't have a place to live every single day. That's not right. That doesn't make any sense. So, you know, we need to also start remembering that the more we deny these individuals housing, the bigger the problem is going to get, because it really isn't as simple as, oh, go get a job. Because what homeless person is going to go to file for a job, and when they ask that individual, hey, can you give us your address? They say, oh, I don't have one. No job is going to think that they're reliable, which is why they're not going to get hired. So we can't keep using these same excuses. We need to start turning over the conversation and start a different narrative. It's not about, oh, you're homeless by choice, so go get a job. That's not a reality anymore. I understand that some people, yes, they did make the wrong choice and they were led astray and they did make the choice to become homeless, but there are so many more people that did not have a say in that and that deserve the quality of life and that deserve a place to live. They deserve shelter. Every single person does. They say the biggest remedy to homelessness is to give somebody a place to live. That's stability. That means that that person is on the track to leading a better life. So that's something that's really big. Next question. This is long. Okay, good. Since COVID-19 here in Riverside, we worked with 3 Riverside City Council members to vote for a moratorium and 6-month payment plan. It's been an issue doing public comments and other issues because only emails or calling are the options versus speaking in person. Due to not addressing our housing crisis, we see more of the inequities. The time is now for low-income housing, low barrier, mixed housing messaging. We are advocating for a community land trust. This is Maribel Nunez from California Partnership and Inland Equity Community Land Trust. So that's fantastic. I would say honestly, so I think this is, COVID-19 is proving really beneficial for us, younger people who know how to use technology, who can be mobilized using technology. So honestly, I think this is gonna start disincentivizing the NIMBYs because a lot of them are a little bit older and not as tech savvy. So this gives us an opportunity to jump online and to email our congressperson, our council members, our mayors, and say, hey, we're not okay with this. This is a big issue. This is why. Here's what we're experiencing in our specific city, and this is what you need to start addressing. So like I said, just opening up that conversation. I agree with everything you said, Maribel. I appreciate your comment. Next question, is affordable housing in California worse than other states? Are you aware of policies in other states that California might need to adopt? So yes, California, we have one of the worst housing crises in the country. So in terms of other policies in other states, I will never advocate to replicate what another state is doing because we're so different. So this is something that we really have to understand, is that each area is different. And so we can't say, oh, well, one state is implementing this, so we need to do that, because the demographics and what people need are much different. What I will say though is that it's good to get different ideas. So something that I actually saw was in the state of Oregon, local jurisdictions are not actually in charge of the land use. It's actually the state who allocates land. I think that's an extremely positive thing. Will it get passed here in the state of California? Oh my God, no. No council member, no mayor, no anybody is gonna say, yes, take away my one power. They won't let you do that. So I would say you have to really see what's easiest and what's going to be most effective. I think we have to talk about effective and also equity. I'm not talking about equality here ever. I'm a very big equity person, because we need to make sure that we're understanding that, you know, this one area is so different, so we can't implement what we're doing here in another area. So I would say aware of policies. Yeah, so on terms of policies, I would just say I think it needs to be the state and local jurisdictions communicating with one another to see what they can do together. But you know, when it comes down to it, it's about money. It really is. So, you know, although local jurisdictions are not in charge of actually building it, developers actually have to pay for it. Local jurisdictions are always going to try and get the biggest bang for their buck. So I would say it comes down to money and incentives. So we do have to come up with some incentives. How do you envision our future Southern California? Will it look closer to the East Coast with more buildings and skylines? So, very interesting question. How do I envision our future Southern California? I'll start with that. I think COVID-19 was actually one of the best things that has happened to this state. I don't mean to, like, I don't want that to sound really bad, because I know how horrible it is in terms of people who have been, you know, passing away and getting very sick because of this disease. But what I mean by that is that COVID is going to get us to look at things a lot differently, because we're going to have to look at the different ways that things can operate. And I think this gave a really big, different perspective to everybody. So I really do think that in terms of a future Southern California, I think it really is going to come down to eventually legislation is going to get passed that's going to make sure that housing gets developed one way or another. No matter how much people fight, there is going to be some form of legislation, whether it's me doing it as a congresswoman in the future. I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but one day it's going to happen. There is going to be a law or some kind of piece of legislation that's going to be passed that's going to ensure that housing gets built. What I can say is I don't know when that's going to happen, but I would say that what I'm hopeful for is that eventually local jurisdictions are going to start to understand that we cannot keep going about things the way we have been going about them. It is simply not working. If RHNA has been implemented since 1969 and we still are in a housing crisis, we know that that piece of legislation is not working, so we need to try something different. So I'm hoping that conversations get brought up, and I'll definitely be sure that I'm one of those people bringing them up, because I do have, you know, a lot of connections. I am at these meetings, so trust me, when I'm there, sometimes I want to jump up and scream at everyone and tell them to, you know, stop talking about not building housing, but I eventually do hope that the conversations will be opened up to that. I have a few more questions. Okay, this is not a question, but I just wanted to say I genuinely appreciate your passion and efforts for raising awareness. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. I come from the Bay Area, so I understand where you're coming from, especially in regards with affordable housing and taking a stand to legislation. I feel as if a lot of people do not understand the roles they play as citizens, and they are more powerful than they believe. Thank you so much for your time and advocating for these people. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Next question, again from Maribel. How can we engage the county to be a part of this conversation? Also, how can we ask the county to use county funds for housing? They only depend on HUD. So what I can say is that no county is going to give you any funding for housing. It's not going to happen just because of their budgets. They're so small. Nobody would say, here, go ahead and take what little I have. That's just the basic facts. So we need to not engage counties. We need to engage the state. It really is about state funding because the state has a lot more tools in their toolkit than counties and cities do. So it comes with talking to your governor, your congresswomen and men. You can start talking to your mayors because some mayors do have a very quick connection to the governor. So I do think it starts at the state level and not the county. So when it comes to conversations, I think we need to think a little bit bigger because your advocation for affordable housing goes a very long way when you show up to those city council meetings. It really does. When you send those emails to your mayors, when you write those letters to your congresswomen. But at the state level, you'll make much more of an impact, especially if there's a lot more people bringing it to the state's attention, because they're going to understand, oh, well, you know what? We do need to start raising more awareness. We do need to start finding more funds to put into streamlining the process for a development pipeline. So funding housing, most of our tenants are ready. Do you know? Okay. Yeah. So like I said, yeah, 50% of the budget does go towards police and fire. So that's the same as saying somebody who spends 50% of their income on housing. It's the same thing. So the city is balancing a small budget, but I can only be sympathetic to that to a certain extent, because at some point they do need to start advocating since they are working for the people. They are public officials. So that's so important. And that concludes the question section. If any of you guys have any other questions, I actually did not leave my contact information on the PowerPoint, but I can just give it to you guys right now if you have a pen and paper. My email address is nikhr001@ucr.edu, and you can email me anytime, no matter what, any questions that you have. If you want to open up a civic debate, if you want to work with me to get a cohort of people to write a letter to Congress or to the governor or to your local mayor, I am more than happy to work with you on that. So if you guys have any questions or comments whatsoever, go ahead and do that. And I want to thank you guys again so much for listening to me. I talk really fast and I get really passionate about this stuff. So I appreciate you guys being so just graceful in listening.
Thank you so much, Natalie. That is unfortunately all the time we have for today's SPP Student Spotlight event. Thank you to both Natalie and Imad for showcasing the excellent work they are doing here at the UCR School of Public Policy. We hope you'll join us at our next Student Spotlight event in fall. Again, if you know any outstanding public policy students who would make good presenters, please send suggestions to spp@ucr.edu. Our SPP webinar series continues next week with a discussion on COVID-19 with Riverside City Council member Andrew Melendrez. You can find out about our next online events at spp.ucr.edu. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.